BBC News with Sue Montgomery. A Ukrainian military commander in the shattered eastern town of Bakhmut has described to the BBC the fierceness of the fighting there. He said he hadn't seen Russian forces fight anywhere else with similar determination. Yogita Lemaye sent us this report from a position in Bakhmut.
We watch them use Soviet-era weapons, a long gun that fires artillery. Soldiers tell us they work well and do the job, but modern equipment would help push through the deadlock on the ground. On the other side of the front line isn't just the Russian military. There are also thousands of mercenaries from the private Wagner group. The soldiers expect incoming fire, so we retreat to a bunker, where we spoke to 21-year-old Alexander. It's stuck for many reasons. The winter makes it harder to use equipment. We also have a shortage of weapons and ammunition, Alexander replies. Then back to positions they go, each side trying to wear the other down in this battle of endurance.
The US has signalled its intent to disrupt the production of Iranian drones. Russia has been using them intensively to hit civilian targets in Ukraine. Sasha Schlichter reports.
Drones are cheap. Russia can afford to send swarms of them towards a single power plant, overwhelming costly air defences. Iran has been supplying drones with impunity in their thousands. But now the US administration has calculated that this could be disrupted by targeting Western companies whose parts are being used in Iranian drones. The White House says it's now talking to these companies and assessing further export controls aimed at restricting Tehran's access to technologies used in drones.
The US House of Representatives remains paralysed after its Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, has again failed to secure enough support to become Speaker. Hardliners have been derailing his attempts for a second day. Gary O'Donoghue is in Washington.
We've had 6 rounds of voting and he's slipped from 203 to 201. I suppose there may come a moment where some of these more moderate Republicans will say enough is enough, the damage that we're doing could be irrevocable, we need to go in there and sort it out. Problem is, Kevin McCarthy doesn't seem to be in a mood to listen to any of that, and while he's not prepared to bow out, they don't seem prepared to withdraw their support from him because they would see that as far too big a concession to the 20 rebels, not just now, but something that would drive the whole process of governing over the next 2 years. So the stakes are pretty high, and as things stand, no one has blinked.
World News from the BBC. The US Embassy in Cuba has reopened to process visa applications. Washington closed its operations in 2017 because of a series of unexplained staff illnesses. The step comes as Cuban migration to the US reaches levels not seen in decades. Will Grant reports.
It has been more than 5 years since the State Department all but shuttered the US Embassy in Havana. Consular services were reduced to a minimum under the Trump administration, and most staff were sent home following reports of unexplained health incidents among embassy employees, which became known as the Havana syndrome. Many theories behind the illnesses have now been debunked, but the full causes remain unclear. US relations with the Cuban government have gradually started to improve, and the Biden administration has now reopened the embassy for processing immigrant visas.
EU crisis response officials have recommended travel controls on visitors from China, where COVID infections have exploded. The guidance includes passengers having a negative COVID-19 test before they depart from China, random tests on arrival, and wearing face masks on flights. They also want aircraft wastewater tested for the virus, as was just implemented by Frankfurt Airport in Germany. A Swedish court has found a former jihadist guilty of violating international law by posing with dead or severely injured bodies in Syria 10 years ago. The court said Ube Jalebe Benuitsen, a Swedish citizen, also made victory signs and derogatory statements with the aim of spreading the material as war propaganda online. Weather forecasters in the United States have alerted residents along the coast of California to a powerful storm, expected to bring up to 10 centimetres of rain to an area already saturated by earlier downpours. They say the bomb cyclone could bring widespread flooding and the likely loss of life. BBC News.